Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and happy Valentine's Day. I'm Brooke Lovelace, Executive Director of the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council, and we're glad to have you here with us today. We do have some sad news to start out with for those that haven't heard, and I think I'll just turn it over to Amy to share that since Amy was really close with our legislator that passed away. Amy, do you want to start us off with our sad news?
Yeah, many of you on the call probably have already heard this, but Representative Dave Heaton passed away on Wednesday night. He had been in hospice for a couple of days. And, he was in his early 80s, but he had retired a few years ago from the legislature after 25 years and had served as the HHS budget subcommittee chair. And I think all of us know and love Dave. He was really passionate and committed to making sure Medicaid worked for people, and tried to really actually really embrace the whole idea of community living very early on. And so he will be missed. I had to put a picture of him with my twins up at the Capitol. They're now 13, but he was so excited to meet them and got to take them into the chambers and everything. But he was such a great guy. So I know many of you might want to post some comments to him. His obituary will be posted at this link here, and there will be I don't know his arrangements yet down in Mount Pleasant, when they'll have the funeral, but you can definitely post some comments. I did on the family board there. They have a message board where you can put comments in. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. Just to get started today, I wanted to give you some general updates on bills, and then we have a couple of things we really wanted to focus in on. Today is the last day for legislators to request a bill. So there's kind of a backlog of bills. So we'll still see lots of new bills coming out, but legislators had to ask for them today. It didn't mean they had to be filed today. They just had to ask for those bills. So that's important because we're 3 weeks away from the first deadline, which they call funnels, which is March 7th. That's a Friday. While it seems like 3 weeks is a long time, it's only 12 working days because they really only work half day Monday and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So maybe not even 12 working days to get this work done, get bills out of committee. They have to be out of their first committee. So that committee they're first assigned to has to vote them out for it to still be alive and debated the rest of the year. I also wanted to update you. Some of you may have missed last week's webinar on Medicaid. We called it What's at Stake and How to Advocate. We do have that posted on the website at that link there. So if you didn't get a chance to be there and learn what all is being discussed out in DC and Congress, you can kind of take a look at that at your leisure. Also wanted to give you an update on the rate reviews we talked about 2 weeks ago. That is Iowa Health and Human Services has been looking at all of the Medicaid rates, and they benchmarked them to 85% of what the Medicare rate is. So they wanted to make sure every rate paid was at least 85% of the benchmark, 85% of Medicare. That also included decreases in some rates because they were already over the 85%. I just wanted to note that legislators are hearing from people. They are understanding that this would be terrible for behavioral health rates and other rates that have been increased over time. And they are very much not interested in lowering rates, at least not the way they're presented in that package. So keep up the good work in talking about those. I do want to note that the home and community-based services waiver provider tiered rates are not included in this. This is just all the other rates. So they weren't impacted by the rate review. Except they might, you still might have people served by those providers who get extra, like go to the dentist or do things outside of what that tiered rate is that would be impacted. I wanted to note that we have new bill numbers for the comprehensive transition and post-secondary education scholarship bills. It is such a mouthful every time I say it. The CTP bills. I know we hate acronyms, but that's a really long title. But both of those bills are out of committee, and they are House File 271 and Senate File 283. I'm sorry, they were out of their original committee, I should say. House File 271 came out of Health and Human Services Committee and then was re-referred to the House Appropriations Committee. It's okay. It's not a stalling tactic. It's just something that the House does when there is talk of a fiscal impact, a cost to the state. But those are the new bill numbers. Those will not, well, I shouldn't say that. They may change again. The Senate bill will stay Senate File 283, but the House could vote it out as an appropriations bill, and then it would have a new number, but they just do that to confuse all of us, right? We'll keep them updated in the bill tracker. There's also a new number for the autism insurance coverage bill. That is House File 330. It is also out of committee, so both of these, all three of these bills that I just mentioned are safe from that March 7th funnel. The Seizure Safe Schools bills are out of subcommittee now, and they still need to be voted out of committee before March 7th. So they're in a pretty good position as well. I think everyone's hopeful that they will get out of committee this next week. So that would keep them safe for the funnel as well. Carlin, I hope if you can monitor the chat. I can't really see it when I have my presentation mode up, but I'll pause if there's anybody who has any questions about those before I move on to the new bills. Okay, I'm gonna keep moving on. So we had some new bills that were introduced in the past week. House Study Bill 122. That is requiring, sorry, ABA coverage in the Children's Health Insurance Program, which is what we call Hawkeye. That bill came out of subcommittee. This is really to replace the Autism Support Fund program. They're starting to try to move away from that because it's so hard for families to get funding through that program. They have to be denied coverage by insurance, and they have to meet some other requirements, and it's been difficult for families to get funding through that. So they are going to use some of the money that they used for that program to pay for this expanded coverage in the Hawkeye program. And I should mention the Children's Health Insurance Program goes up to 302% of the federal poverty level, which is about $98,000 for a family of 4. So it does cover a lot of kids that are in middle income families as well. Senate File 242, you probably have seen this before if you've been around for a while, but it requires insurers pay for this condition. It's an autoimmune condition. I believe it requires specialty food and other things that insurance has been denying. That does have a subcommittee on the 17th. That bill's been around and coming back for at least 5 or 6 years, and it has never passed. So I think the Senate is going to try again at that. We have 2 bills that were introduced that take away some of the requirements that you have to prove to charge somebody with misrepresenting a service animal. Right now, you have to have given somebody written notice once before you can actually charge them with a crime for intentionally misrepresenting a service animal. So lying about whether your dog is a service animal. That bill, those bills were just introduced, so they haven't been assigned a subcommittee yet. Representative Turek just introduced yesterday House File 408, which requires what we call standing appropriation to end home and community-based services waiting lists. A standing appropriation is just automatic. It basically says whatever amount of money you need to pay for that, that's how much you need to spend. So as you can see, this bill is going to have a tough time because it's probably going to have a really big cost to it, but clearly something you all have been talking about in ending the waiting lists for those services. House File 375 was introduced by Representative Gaines, another Democrat, probably doesn't have a great chance of being taken up, but it sets the minimum wage for a direct service professional at $20 an hour. I will note the thing that it doesn't include is anything that requires providers' rates to be increased to help pay for this. So that's going to be a problem. If providers don't get more money to pay higher rates, that just means they can serve fewer people. I'm going to stop there before I move on to a final set of bills. Any questions? Okay. We'll still have more time for questions. There also, Carlin and I decided to focus on House Study Bill 35 and Senate Study Bill 1057 as our bill of the week. We put these out weekly to legislators, and then we create talking points for advocates that match that bill of the week. And this week we're doing it on a constitutional amendment that was offered by the Attorney General. This summer, the Iowa Supreme Court said that the Iowa Constitution does not allow a child or a person with an intellectual or developmental disability to appear in court by video. States allow children, specifically children, and usually persons with IDD, to testify in a different room away from the person who is accused of abusing them through a video. So they don't have to face the person, their abuser, in court. It's a protection for those individuals. Our Supreme Court said our Constitution doesn't allow this. So that has created a need to make a change to our Constitution, which is a really long process. Our legislature would have to pass this bill either this year or next year, and then again in either 2027 or 2028. And then after they pass it that second time, it goes to the public, to Iowa voters, to vote on the Constitution. So then it has to pass that. So it would really be at least November of 2027 before we could actually see this going into effect. Legislators are thinking about how to change Iowa law to make this happen before then. But until then, people are going to have to face their accuser in court, which can be very intimidating for people. And the reason we decided to focus in on this is we started looking at the statistics, and it's pretty scary, the statistics on what on how people with disabilities are much more likely to be victims of violent crime. The really scary stat that came out was that 90%, 9 out of every 10 people with a disability will have been sexually assaulted in their lifetime.
Yep. I have a son that was actually sexually abused right here in Iowa, 2018, and they don't care. They absolutely don't care. They have no laws that protect these kids. I've been saying this for a long, long time. They're not being protected in the schools, and they're not being protected anywhere else. And it is apparent. It's not just now recently obvious. It has been obvious. And I don't understand why. And then they'll just give these guys plea deals anyway. So very upset about this. I'm glad we're talking about it now, though, because it needs to be talked about.
Thanks, Chad. And I should also disclose, I lobby for the Iowa Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and I know that they too are only just starting a new effort to work on this issue with people with disabilities, and to try to get at prevention of sexual violence against individuals with disabilities, particularly children with disabilities, but all ages. Um, our bill of the week does have the links to all of the statistics, so you can check them. They're from the Department of Justice. You know, some of them are not, as current as the last year or two, but they're it's just scary, especially when you consider, when you look at that 90% that have been sexually assaulted, half of those have been assaulted more than 10 times.
That we know of, right? That we
Yeah, we
know.
know them, because
They
also
can't report.
with disabilities are less likely to report their assaults. And I think what's important about this bill is that, usually a child or a person with a disability is going to be the only witness in the case against their abuser. So if they are intimidated about going to court, that's likely going to end up with them not being able to convict the person and
No,
stop.
most of these kids, and I spend a lot of time with them, as many as I can. I mean, they can talk when they're comfortable with people, but even if they've been abused, I've witnessed this all on video. I've seen the effects of it, and actually the disability itself, right? They're just unable to report it for whatever reason it is. And that's not all of them, but that is a lot of them because of insecurities. I mean, the fact that they feel the way they do in the community right now, right? They don't feel connected. And that's what a lot of these kids' problem is in the schools, because we don't have a very inviting or sensitive community, and it starts in the schools. Maybe it's teaching K through 12 about disabilities and responsibility people have to these kids, because they do, whether they believe in God or they believe in money fiscally, they're going to pay for it if they don't. And if you want to attract more people to the field, to be service providers, maybe starting to get these kids understanding of what's happening now might develop that. I mean, it seems to me this is the way where to go.
Thanks, Chad. And I know there is another bill, I'll have to check that out too, that is going more into the prevention overall of sexual abuse of children. And so I'll have to, and it deals with schools and education in schools. So I will take another look at that, because I hadn't really read it through.
Last mention, maybe bringing back the civil rights, their civil rights, commission, and enforcing ADA law, so daycares and everyone else can't just say, sorry, we can't take them and have a disability, right? That's not how the law works. I'm not a lawyer, but I can read, right? So, and without an enforcement mechanism, that's just going to keep happening, and that's what's happening. And then these kids are forced into worse scenarios and situations. Maybe schools need to have before and after school daycare for these kids when the daycares won't take them, because that's probably the safest place for them.
Yeah, and you're kind of actually, there's some protections that we're going to talk about next that I think are relevant to that. I will just note that our talking points will have some talking points for advocates who want to take action on this issue. And we always have the QR code to link to our Take Action Center. That's easy for you to send a message, but you can find this all on our website. It's not there yet because I just got approval of it. I have to make one small change, and then I will post them right after this meeting. So you'll be able to find them after this meeting.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. But the next thing I wanted to bring up on this is also something that we're monitoring closely, Section 504 lawsuits. So some of you may have heard about this, but Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is what gives individuals with disabilities protections from discrimination from anyone that gets a federal money. So schools, hospitals, clinics, anybody that gets federal funding can't discriminate against somebody because of their disability. And that's long standing. Those rules were drafted in 1977.
If we have
And
enforcement.
yeah, and just updated in last year. So 17 states, including Iowa, you see the little red map up there, have filed a lawsuit against the federal government and said that the lawsuit basically says Section 504 is not constitutional. Now, our Attorney General has said that she joined the lawsuit because the Biden administration had said they're going to include gender dysphoria, so transgender, as in the definition of disability. That is not in any of the rules. That was only in a statement by the administration. But this lawsuit goes much further. That is confirmed by lawyers. So if anyone tells you differently, they're wrong. This goes so much further. It actually states that they want the Supreme Court to overturn Section 504 and all of its protections and rule it unconstitutional. That means all of the protections, including that schools must include students with disabilities and help them through accommodations. It includes that doctors and schools must have sign language, that videos have to be captioned, that doctors must give clear information to people with disabilities, that hospitals have to have the tools and machines to work with wheelchair users. These are just some of the things that were included in these updated rules, but also all of the basic things since 1977 that have been in place are in jeopardy of being lost. Carlin and I both, and I think Brooke too, was able to be on the community meeting that a national organization has had. This group is called the Disability Rights Education Defense Fund, which is that DREDF.org. And they have one of the most phenomenal pages in plain language to explain the 504, and that is that first link there, the Protect 504. I highly recommend, if you want to learn more about it, to go there. It is very easy to understand. This is pretty complicated issue, and it's very easy to understand. But also the second link is for their community recording. They had up to 3,000 slots available, and they hit their cap. So a lot of people could not get into the community meeting. But this gives you a recording of that presentation. And it was also really good about what this means, what could be at risk, and what you can do. And I want to emphasize what you can do, that link on Take Action Center. And I'm going to pause here for a second and switch over to our Take Action Center, because it has a lot of sorry, I'm trying to get my screen up here. There we go. It has some information that you can help take action on really quickly. So if you go to our Take Action Center, which on our website, you just go up here at the top, it says Take Action. And then we have a show your support for 504. And we have the whole thing already written up for you, some tips on what you can say, and then a suggested comments. It's basically asking our Attorney General to withdraw from the lawsuit. So I just wanted to mention that because we would like to see some, I'm not sure if that's shared. Did that share, Harlan? Did you see it? Okay. So it will help people who might want to take action, and we're trying to get our Attorney General to make a change in her position on this. All right, so I'll go back to the screen, and then I'm going to pause there for questions. I think I got it all in. We got 5 minutes. Always have this, just a reminder on the tools that are on our website that you can use, but go back to this page. Does anybody have any questions, anything? Go ahead, Eric.
Eric, from Waterloo. My question is on section 504. Can somebody refresh my memory on the difference between a 504 plan in an educational setting and having an IEP plan, but not necessarily a 504 plan? What's the difference between the two?
Berlin, do you want to take that one? I can tell you that a 504 plan has accommodations for a disability. So I have a daughter who's on that needs to be able to have extra time for tests and be able to use headphones if she's getting distracted in class. But an IEP has a lot more to it and a lot more binding things. Carlin, do you want to, or does somebody?
That's what I would have said. So go for it, Amy. Yeah, if anybody else wants to chime in. But as you said, 504s are more about accommodations, and sometimes they're temporary. If somebody breaks their leg and needs an accommodation, they might come under a 504 plan and then be off of it. Whereas the IEPs are, and sometimes you can come off an IEP too, but IEP is more a program for navigating your a student's journey through school.
So I went through this issue with my son who has an IEP, and he has ADHD. So I advocated for a late start in the day when he didn't get no sleep from the day before. And what I understood is an IEP can't really cover that. I mean, it can, but when the school, for instance, won't allow you to because of their misrepresentation of what it's for, then a 504 would be what would be used to protect them, to give them accommodation for the late start, if that makes sense. And if anyone can verify that, that would be great. But it just seems like there's just not a lot of understanding, or schools that just don't want to do it, and a state that won't help parents fight for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Ben asked, can the Senate or House call Attorney General Brenna Bird to make her testify? They can. Don't think they will, but they could. Yeah. I'm looking at the chat now. Feel free to just jump in and unmute if you have other comments or questions.
Does anyone know what the state's like alternative to, for instance, if we don't have 504 protections and we don't have this or that? Again, I don't know if it's been brought to the attention of the state. I've brought it to them many times about if we don't have a civil rights division that is actually pursuing, violations, especially in daycares, what are these kids going to do? And why are we going to still be pounding on the parents to get off of welfare when we can't go to work and our kids can't go to daycare? Which in my opinion, kids are suffering because of that, because they need that for their psychological, development. I mean, there's so much they can learn from these other kids. I don't understand why. I just feel like everyone just thinks these kids need to be in a separate room. Not everyone, but the state, need to be separated. And that's going to help, or they don't care. One of the two.
Yeah, I think that all of the things you're bringing up, Chad, are very relevant to also the discussion that is ongoing about what the feds are going to do with the Department of Education, with education funding, with Medicaid funding. If they're block granted and we don't have some kind of law in place on how those dollars need to be directed and used, we might be facing a very big shift. I guess I'm gonna say
Well,
to be,
it'd be a crisis.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say, but
That's true. It's just true. I'll tell you, as a parent out here that is utilizing Section 8 housing, you know, I've worked my whole life utilizing Section 8 housing, food stamps that is not enough, and they don't really care, you know. And of course, Social Security, when you get it, if you're fortunate enough to get child support, they deem it so you don't even get that. They take it to cover the Social Security. You know, it is a 100% a terrible situation for any parent that has to be doing this. And it's, again, I put it in the chat. Maybe these legislators should sign up to these Iowa groups, these Facebook groups, like the Iowa Special Needs Connection. Like that has a wealth of knowledge for anyone that wants to figure out how to write a policy around these issues. And I don't know. I don't know if they're not seeing it or they just don't care.
I think probably some are on it. Like a Molly Donahue, Senator Molly Donahue, actually has worked as a special education teacher. So, you know, I think that is, but I think for other advocates on the call, that's probably a good thing that you can suggest to your legislator is to join those forums to learn more. And I know we're at our half hour. We're going to lose our wonderful interpreter. Thank you so much, Talon, for being here. I just want to remind you, we have our next one's on the 28th. We publish something every week to kind of keep people updated. So look in your boxes on Monday, your inboxes for our report. And with that, thank you for being here. Happy Valentine's Day. Should have said that right off.
Happy
Have a great
Valentine's Day. Share the love, everyone.
Thank you.